We live in an age terrified of the fool. We have optimized the clown out of existence, sanitized our public squares, and turned our collective gaze toward a horizon of relentless, sterile efficiency. We celebrate the serious, the strategic, the predictable, and yet, if we look closely at the foundation of our deepest myths, our most profound psychological insights, and the very mechanism of personal growth, we find a figure lurking in the shadows of the collective unconscious. A figure who exists to remind us that a system without a fault line is not a fortress, but a prison waiting to collapse under its own weight. That figure is Carl Jung's Trickster. He is the sacred clown, the breaker of bones and the mender of souls. He is the alchemist's volatile Mercury, the coyote who steals fire while tripping over his own paws. To understand him is to understand that disruption is not the enemy of order, but its most essential architect. This is an exploration of the archetype of mischief, not as a force of simple destruction, but as the catalytic agent of unexpected and necessary transformation. The common assumption, the surface-level reading we are fed by a culture obsessed with control, is that chaos is the antithesis of order. We build our lives, our institutions, our very egos, on the premise that stability is achieved by eradicating the unpredictable. The trickster emerges to expose this as the most dangerous lie we tell ourselves. He does not represent the chaos that comes after the fall. He is the chaos that prevents the fall. He is the pressure release valve on a boiler of hubris. Jung, in his seminal essay On the Psychology of the Trickster Figure, understood this with the clarity of a surgeon. He posited that the trickster is a primordial figure, a psychic structure that hails from a time before the ego had fully differentiated itself from the unconscious. He is, in Jung's words, a being who is a forerunner of the Savior, and paradoxically, a creature of the most primitive and undeveloped kind. This duality, the idiot and the Messiah, is the core, the intellectual fingerprint of the archetype. The trickster isn't a character, he is a process. He is the psyche's own immune response to its own stagnation. To truly grapple with this, we have to go beyond the simple notion of a rule breaker. We must interrogate the quality of the disruption. Consider the Native American coyote, a figure Jung studied extensively. Coyote is not a noble rebel. He is a bumbling, gluttonous, lecherous fool who gets his head stuck in a buffalo skull or mistakes his own reflection for a rival. He is the embodiment of failure. And yet, it is this same creature who steals fire from the gods, who scatters the stars across the sky, who teaches humanity how to survive. The foolishness is not a bug. It is a feature. It is a form of radical humility in a world where the ego is constantly striving for perfection and control. The trickster arrives in the guise of the idiot to remind us of our fundamental fallibility. He is the force that trips the arrogant king onto his face in the mud, not out of malice, but to remind him that he too is made of clay. This brings us to the trickster's most vital social function, the exposure of hypocrisy. The sacred clown, found in traditions from the Pueblo Hone, the clown society, to the medieval court jester, possesses a unique immunity. He is the only one who can speak truth to power, because he does so under the guise of absurdity. His jokes are not merely for laughter. They are surgical strikes. When the priests become too rigid, the clown mimics their rituals with obscene exaggeration, revealing the dead ritualism that has replaced living spirit. When the chief grows tyrannical, the jester mocks his gait, his decrees, his vanity, shattering the illusion of infallibility. This is not destruction for its own sake. It is a brutal form of cultural hygiene. The trickster is the fly in the ointment of dogma, the contradiction in the logic of absolutism. He embodies a profound, uncomfortable wisdom. An institution that cannot laugh at itself is an institution already in decay. Now, let's move from the social to the psychological. If the trickster operates in culture, his primary battleground is the human ego. Here, we must engage with the work of Jung's acolyte and eventual dissenter, Erich Neumann, to complicate our understanding. In The Origins and History of Consciousness, Neumann frames the trickster as the figure of the nascent ego, struggling to break free from the overwhelming power of the unconscious. He is the hero, clumsy and half-formed, who wins not through strength, but through cunning. But where Neumann sees a developmental stage to be overcome, I would argue the trickster is a permanent, necessary antagonist to the fully formed ego. The mature ego, with its cherished identity, its rigid morals, its carefully curated persona, is the very structure the trickster exists to dismantle. He is the inner saboteur, the Freudian slip that reveals the repressed desire, the sudden, inexplicable urge to throw a stone through the window of a life too neatly arranged. He doesn't just break the rules, he breaks the self that believes its own rules are absolute. This is the shadow made manifest, not to destroy the self, but to expand it. This leads us to the alchemical dimension, where the trickster reveals his true transformative nature. Jung's study of alchemy is crucial here. The trickster is the embodiment of Mercurius, the mercurial volatile spirit that is both the poison and the cure, the prima materia and the lapis philosophorum. Alchemy was never about turning lead into literal gold. It was a symbolic language for the transformation of the psyche. The alchemists described Mercurius as duplex, dual-natured, a serpent, a trickster god, a hermaphrodite, a poison. He was the agent of solutio, the dissolution phase of the opus, where the old, solid structure, the leaden ego, the corrupt kingdom, is broken down, dissolved in the waters of the unconscious, so that something new could be coagulated. The chaos he creates is not the end state. It is the process. It is the alchemical negrito, the blackening, the putrefaction that precedes the dawn. Without the trickster's disruption, there is no solutio. Without solutio, there is no coagulatio, no transformation, no gold. Let's anticipate a counter-argument here, one that is often leveled against any valorization of chaos. Are we not romanticizing disruption? What about the pure, unadulterated destruction of a tyrant or a narcissist? What about the sociopath who breaks rules for personal gain, cloaking their cruelty in the language of the trickster? This is a vital distinction. The trickster's chaos is sacred precisely because it is self-inclusive. The coyote, the jester, Hermes, they are not exempt from their own mischief. The trick is always turned back on the trickster. They are the first to be humiliated, the first to suffer the consequences of the chaos they unleash. When Hermes steals Apollo's cattle, he is caught, and his punishment is to give the lyre he invented to Apollo, establishing a cosmic harmony through his transgression. The trickster's journey is one of suffering. The modern, pathological version, the trickster, without the sacred, without the humility, without the self-destructive foolishness, is not the archetype, but its hollow, dangerous shell. It is the pure Eternus, the eternal child, who delights in burning down the village for the thrill of the flame, with no intention of rebuilding anything, least of all himself. The true trickster is always, in the end, on the side of wholeness. So, if the trickster is this volatile, essential force, How do we integrate him? We cannot. That is the final, humbling lesson. The ego's greatest trick is the belief that it can manage the unconscious, that it can schedule its own dissolution for a convenient Thursday afternoon. The trickster is not a tool to be wielded. He is a force to be recognized. We integrate him not by domesticating him, but by developing the humility to recognize his presence in our lives. It means learning to see the profound necessity in the flat tire that derails a bad relationship, or the job loss that forces a long overdue reckoning. It means cultivating the ability to laugh truly, gut laugh at our own pretensions, our own carefully constructed identities. When we can look at the person we were so determined to be just last year and see a fool, we are not betraying ourselves. We are participating in the sacred clowning of the psyche. We are acknowledging that we, like Coyote, like Mercury, are both wise and foolish, and that our growth depends not on eradicating the fool, but on listening to him. The propulsive journey of this argument has been to take us from the Jungian clinic to the alchemical furnace, from the sacred clown of the pueblo to the inner saboteur of the ego, to arrive at a transformed understanding. The thesis we began with, that the trickster is a disruptive agent of transformation, has evolved. We can now see that he is not merely an agent of transformation. He is the very principle of transformation made manifest. He is the paradox at the heart of all growth, that the way forward is often a step sideways, that wisdom often wears the mask of foolishness, and that the most stable systems are those built with a built-in capacity for self-sabotage. The trickster is the psyche's guarantee that we will never be allowed to calcify, that we will never be permitted to mistake our current form for our final form. He is the crack in the cosmic egg through which the light of new creation seeps in. We began by stating we live in an age terrified of the fool. But perhaps the terror runs deeper. Perhaps we are not just afraid of the fool. We are afraid of the wisdom he represents. We are afraid of the alchemical truth that to become something new, we must be willing to be unmade. We cling to our structures, our identities, our certainties, not realizing that they are the very lead from which we are meant to be freed. The trickster, the sacred clown, stands at the threshold of this fear, holding a crooked mirror. In that mirror, we do not see a hero. We do not see a stable, perfected self. We see a ridiculous, glorious, contradictory creature, part divine, part animal, part buffoon. And the final trick, the ultimate revelation, is that this creature is us. It always was. The work, then, is not to summon the trickster, but to stop running from him. It is to recognize the profound sanctity in the moments when life falls apart, to see in the chaos not a disaster, but a solution. It is to find the courage to let the old structure dissolve, trusting that the same volatile spirit that broke at will, in its own inscrutable time, coagulated into something stronger, stranger, and more whole. To live with the trickster is to accept an invitation to a perpetual dance with the unknown, where the steps are never predictable. The music is often a joke, and the only unforgivable sin is taking yourself too seriously. In the end, the sacred clown doesn't just bring about a new order. He reminds us that order itself is a transient, beautiful, and often hilarious illusion. And in that remembering, we find not just transformation, but a kind of profound, unshakable freedom.